Today's lesson, we'll be learning about functions and how we can use functions to make our code simpler. So our class, we usually do principles and computing. So today we are merging the two, and we're going to be doing abstraction with functions with our parameters and return statements and happy fun things. So we've used functions before when we were doing Lightbot. We created a function that would do the moonwalk for us, and you recall that functions have two parts. There's the function definition, where you define how a function will work, and there's the function call, where you request to have that performed. So inside of TouchDevelop, our functions have a name. So you name your function, the parameters that you want to use. Remember from last lesson, parameters are the like width or height or any variables that you need like that. A list of return elements, so what you're going to be sending back through the call, and then the body of what it actually does. So, for example, if we have an action here called move ball by, this means that we want to move our ball by some sort of distance. So here we have an x distance and a y distance, and we're going to set the ball's new x position to the x plus our new distance change, and set the y to y plus change in y. Okay? Or you can do pink. So if I call action pink, it'll return a color, and inside of our body we have to set the color, so color equals pink. And again, this is our GB values. Okay? So when you're returning a value, sometimes a value would have the type void, which means that the function does something, but it doesn't return a value. And so the empty value is void. There's nothing there. So in our action move ball, our color, our distances were x and y, and then we didn't have anything being returned at the end, so this part was blank. Whereas with action pink, we were returning colors, or my color, and so that is our return type. If you notice, for the parameters being empty, you don't need to put void inside of there, you just need to have the parentheses showing that it's a function. But returns void, in TouchDevelop you can't leave that off. So, as we just mentioned, parameters are the values used as input in the function. So when you say move ball by a distance, then we don't need them on functions that don't require parameters. Our return statement must be, so we need to declare in our function definition what we're going to return. So for this example, we are returning my color, and it's of type color. And so before we complete our program, we actually need to set my color to equal something. We need to initialize the value. So inside of TouchDevelop, our function definitions are listed under the code button. It's a triangle under code, and any of your calls will be located through there. So create bullseye would be identified by this function call with the triangle. And the definition, you can see here we have our x position and our y position as our parameters. So once we actually define our function, we can keep using it over and over again. That way, instead of saying creating a function for reset each time, you can just call with the reset button. So over here, if I press the spacebar, I'm resetting it to 400, 300, which is my starting position. But if I go out of bounds, I'm going to reset my ball to somewhere random. Okay? So if you notice that the definition has n parameters, the call needs n arguments. So if we reset our bullseye to x and y, then we need to match it so that there's an x and a y here. In our reset value when we go out of bounds, you notice that these are longer values and it might not be as clear, but this is a single value because it's a random number between 300 and 500, and a random number between 200 and 400. Okay, so for each number of your parameters, you need that many arguments. And again, these here correspond to the actual position of each argument. So the first one you send in will go to your X position, the second one you go in will go to Y position, and so on and so forth for however many variables you have. Even if you put in a color as the first one, but color is actually the third variable, it doesn't know to set the color with the color. It will try to put the color with the first thing, which might have been a number, and then it'll get upset at you. So our parameters are automatically declared and initialized on call. So when you call your function and you put your values in there, they're automatically put into the actual function definition. And when it finishes, either the modifications that you requested or the value you wanted to be sent back will be sent to you. And as we talked about earlier, make sure you use meaningful names so that people know what you mean when you ask for like exposition or some sort of text. So one of the main reasons that we use functions is that it makes your code more readable. When you're trying to read through a program at the higher level, you see that you have something that's like move the paddles, move the bullseye, reset the bullseye, and it's a lot easier to just read the concept instead of seeing all the exact details on how to do that specifically. If someone wanted to look deeper into the code and see like, oh, how exactly are these paddles moving, they could follow the function call to the definition and see how that works. But for the general reader who's looking at the code, they just want to see step by step how it's working, and then can look more detail later. Okay, so in this example, we used a bullseye as the pong ball. And once we've created this bullseye, we had reset, move, and check for collision. But to the system, it's actually a bunch of circles. But to us, we're dealing with a bullseye. So even though our center bullseye ball is 3 or 4 concentric circles, we don't actually have to deal with move each circle separately. We can just do it all as move the ball. Okay? Well, that's a cool thing about abstraction and functions. And just again as a reminder, our parameters are the names of the input values that are being used, and the arguments are the values. Okay? And just to review, for every number of parameters we have, we need to put in that many values, and our values get sent to our actual function definition. So in the example where A set position, or set the position of value A, inside of here we get our X position, which is 400, and the Y position, which comes into Y, and is 300. So essentially our actual function will do set position to 400, 300. Parameters are automatically declared and initialized on call. Once the function ends, the parameters vanish and will be recreated on the next call. We want to give them useful names so that people know what they mean as soon as they see it. So our function definition, we have the name of our function, the parameters that it needs, and the body that defines how the function works. When we call a function, it has two parts. It has the same name as our definition, and then it has arguments, which are the values that we want to send into our function to be used by the body to do work.